You ready to get the best shape of your life?
All right.
Oh, goodness.
All right, guys. Welcome to the Train the Trainer podcast. This is going to be our first episode of this series that we're super excited about, giving value back to our peers and provide value into a space that we're really passionate about, the personal training field. My name's Andrew Held. I'm a fitness manager. I'm a regional manager in a company called Genesis Health Clubs, the largest privately held health club company in the world. Certainly in the U.S., definitely top dog in the Midwest. And I'm sitting beside Tiger Faulkner, who's been now twice named our Trainer of the Year. And we're going to go over today what are some of the values and mindsets that need to be adopted in order to be a high achiever, right? Not just in our organization, but for personal trainers across the industry. And that's where we want to provide a lot of value today. So we're going to get a little bit more tactical and a little bit more specific as we go. But we felt like this was an appropriate place to start, is that we've seen a lot of skilled, competent people come by through the years, and they haven't been able to stick if they haven't adopted the necessary mindsets and values that are important to succeed long term, right? Not just be a flash in the pan, but last long term. So we believe that the values are what dictates the long term success of a career. So just in opening, right? Tiger, right? When you were first starting out as a personal trainer, right? Several years ago now, what were some of the first mindset shifts, paradigm shifts that you had to go through in order to see your first jump of success?
Yeah. So when I first got into the career, my whole idea was that this was going to be like a part-time job, like that I was just going to do while I was going to college to become a physical therapist. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I kind of fiddled around with it and never really dove in for probably the first 6 months and just kind of half-assed it, if you will, to be honest. And then the realization of like, okay, this has like a real earning potential and I can make a living wage doing this was like the first big paradigm shift where it was like, okay, this isn't just like a job or isn't just like a part-time gig or a side hustle. Mm-hmm. This is a full-time career where not only can I make a livable income, but like a substantial income where I'm providing for my family or for myself the way that I want to.
How long would you say that took in order for you to see that that shift? Like, I mean, a lot of times people come in and they struggle in those first several months. They never even get to the point where they're able to realize what you've come to find out. How long did it take for you, and maybe a little bit of how you got there?
So truthfully, I mean, it's almost nearly a year before I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to this. Because I started with the company in August and just kind of fiddled around with it. And then we got hit with COVID right away. So then it was, 3 months of like the gym being closed and I was still doing it, but I was still in college. Then I decided I was going to do a bodybuilding show because that was important to me for whatever reason.
Right.
And then, so I remember coming into 2021, I was pretty much fed up with school over Christmas break. And so we used a tool called the schedule exercise where essentially we can like manage our overall business. And we can play with the numbers. And so like getting to plug in like fake clients that I didn't necessarily have yet, mm-hmm. or adjusting like what I'm charging or what I'm getting paid, what's my commission percentage, and seeing how the income could develop was a really big game changer for me. So then in 2021, I committed. My mom, who has a pretty good work ethic, she had committed to doing like 69 or 70 days in a row of working when she helped open this hotel. And so I was like, okay, I want to beat my mom. So for 2021, starting January 1st, I was like, I'm going to do, 75 days in a row. I'm going to just beat my mom. I'm going to work every single day. And then doing that, I think built the foundation to where it was like, okay, the income's real now. Yeah. And then that year was the year that I just barely surpassed the median income for Wichita for a physical therapist by $1,000 on the dot. Yeah. So it was perfect. It worked out well.
So you started and you did the math, right? You figured out what was the work requirement to not necessarily acquire what you wanted to acquire, but make the living that you wanted to, make the impact that you wanted to, right? Whether that's number of sessions or dollars on your check, mm-hmm. right? You did the math and reverse engineered it back to what was required of you, right? And then you just had to ask yourself whether or not you were willing to, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the second piece, is you were willing to work hard, right?
Yeah.
So what was it that you feel like, whether it was either in the way that you were raised or something that you adopted, where when you said your mom worked 60, how many days was it in a row?
I think she did like 69.
69
days.
Yep, in a row. And you're like, I can do more than that, as opposed to where a lot of people are going to see somebody that works really hard and be like, oh, that's just that person. Like,
So, a part of it's like the competitiveness in me. And then you also think about like the 4-minute mile story where it's like, you know, if one person can do it, I feel like I can do it. Like there's no reason that any person's greater than another. And you and I know that, of course, all of our trainers are equal in terms of their ability. It's just how much can they convince themselves that they're willing to do it, or convince themselves that they'll get the outcome if they do the work. So I think part of it's kind of like seeing that example that my mom was setting, or seeing the example that my dad was setting. But then it also came down to like when you broke down for me, where it's like, okay, you need to contact this many people, and then you're going to be able to consult and meet with one-on-one this many people, and that's going to result in how many clients. It was like, well, why would I take 6 more months to do that if I can do it in 100 days? Like I know I can sprint for 100 days. Right. So it was like, I'm going to sprint for 100 days and then I can kind of back off and reap the benefits. The cool part was after I did 100 days, I was like, I love this. I'm just going to keep doing it. And so now I don't really take days off, but
it's amazing what you can see. I mean, as a result, when you really put 100% of yourself into something in an incredible short period of time. Right. Mm-hmm. The problem is, unfortunately, most people get tired after doing a sprint for a week.
Yeah.
Right? So first thing you did is you did the math. Right. Mm-hmm. The second thing you did was decide that you were willing. And then the third thing you did was, okay, if I'm willing to do this, I'm not gonna wait around. I'm gonna go do this now. Right. Yeah. You were quick. Right. You applied speed. For someone that's never done that before, maybe never seen like the fruits of their labor, they've never really worked hard and achieved something, to have that proof for themselves. I mean, we see it with clients all the time, right? The reason why they don't really try that hard in the gym is because they don't know if it's going to work, right? So they don't really put in the amount of work that's required for them to be successful. What's maybe something that maybe you didn't have this issue, but you've seen maybe click in another trainer that has allowed them to adopt that same philosophy?
That's a tougher one. I mean, I think to a degree, like having somebody else there doing it helps. So I remember early in the career, we talk about, you know, this trainer in Colorado where, I mean, he was doing, insane numbers that I'm still not even doing yet. And you guys would tell me about that. And I'm like, yeah, but he's in Colorado. Like, of course he's doing that. Right. Yep. And so I'm like, there's no way. And that I could do that here. And so like being able to see people locally doing it and like seeing those examples, which I think, that's why it's super important that if you're in a commercial setting, and let's say you're a manager, for instance, that like you can lead by example and like show them like what this looks like if you actually pursue it. Because having an example in your market that's talking to the same people you're talking to and using the same system you're using, seeing them be successful makes it really easy to translate for like how I can be successful or how another trainer could be successful.
Yep. Essentially just mirroring, right? And then what's great is then once you become a trailblazer in your market, you can bring a lot of other people along for the ride. So what's really cool, right, for an individual like Tiger as a high-performing personal trainer is it's now easy to have another trainer come along and follow in those footsteps, right? It's like that 4-minute mile example that you used.
Yeah.
So kind of transitioning out of the values that you need to adopt as someone in like their first year in order to become successful, right? Where first you got to do the math. You got to figure out the work requirement. Number 2, you have to decide if you're willing to do the work requirement, right? If you're actually willing to help people, right? Help enough people in order to whittle that down into the clients that are going to make you a living. And then you need to do it quickly, right? You can't be like, all right, I'm going to make 2 contacts a day, right, for 6 months because that's all I need to do in order to be successful, right? It's not going to create enough momentum for you to ever really make the impact that you're wanting to, right? So for a trainer, let's say 3 years in, right? You've gained up quite a solid clientele at that point, right? This is where you see a lot like, let's say, move into another career, right?
Yeah.
That they think is more long lasting, even if potentially what they're doing is more lucrative, right? And they transition, right? So now, that you've gone through that, what were some beliefs and mindsets that you had to adopt in order to move through that phase of your career?
The part where I was like considering another career, like the moment you begin doing that, I think you become like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and then like you don't have that same commitment level towards actually training. And I think, we talk about like being on all the time, right? And it's like, how do I how do I create that? How do I always stay on rather than like having times where it's like, dude, I just want to take a nap or I just want to relax. And I think a lot of that comes from like purpose, like being purpose driven. So, I think a lot of trainers eventually kind of lose sight of like why they started, right? Because we all start this business because we want to help people. And then like they hit the income goal that they're looking for, whether it's at least sustainable or comfortable, but then they see like the variation of it. And then they're worried about money and they quit worrying about like, am I helping people? Right. And you see this too, because their training quality will fall off.
Yep.
And so then the people they're training aren't getting benefits anymore. So then all of a sudden you like have a higher churn rate. You're losing more clients,
Yep.
right? You're not as motivated anymore because you're looking at other options. So you're not chasing down people and you don't remember again why you got into it, and it's to help people. And so I think the little wins help too, though, when you see a veteran trainer like that, like where you see a client make like insurmountable progress. I mean, we had a trainer at our club that was kind of going through that phase, and all of a sudden he had a client have like a huge bump in their progress. And he was like, I love this. I'm never doing anything else. And he recommitted and he re-stepped back in. And so I think it's important to constantly be striving and checking for client progress too, because it's a good reminder back to you as to like, okay, this is the real reason I'm doing this. You know, this is my fulfillment.
That feedback. So remembering why you started, right? And not forgetting to do the things that you did
when you started. Yeah. And we talk about clients a lot too. And clients, a lot of times after they've trained for 6 months or a year, they forget why they started. And, you know, that's why every time I'm talking to a client and we're getting ready to get rolling, the first question I ask is, you know, this is your goal. Why? Right. And I try not to say why too much, but for that one part, I want to know, like, what's your like tearjerker reason for being here? Because 6 months or a year later, I'm going to remind them and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't done that yet. I'm like, yeah, you're not quite there. You're close, but you're not quite there. So like, let's go get that why.
I know we use the analogy of a relationship often, right? Where a lot of times people in relationships, they're 3 years in, right? And potentially at a similar crossroads. And they're like, I don't know why it's not as good as it was, right? Those first 90 days, right? That first month, right? I don't know why it's as good. Well, they're not doing the same things they were doing in the first year. And right. And they're wondering why the magic's gone, if you will. The energy that you put in is going to be the energy that you get out. And I see a lot of trainers hitting that point where they want to start settling and they want to start plateauing, right? Let's say they're making, right, the average personal trainer makes $50,000 a year, right? And they hit that threshold, right? And they're happy, right? And they don't want to grow it anymore. I'm just going to stay set. I'm happy with my schedule. I'm happy with my
How many times have I said that, by the way?
There's plateaus, right?
Yeah.
So for you, what was your first threshold? Like 60,000? Right. Why would someone want to make more than $60,000 a year?
I think I did say that because I was like, I don't get why teachers are broke. They make so much money because they make $60,000.
Right. But the thing was, we weren't maxing out our potential. Right.
No, not at all.
We still felt like we were dabbling. We still felt like we weren't getting out of this career everything we wanted to. So we were always looking elsewhere. Right. We weren't watering our own grass, and we were wondering why the grass might seem greener.
Well, I did those first 100 days, and then it was like, oh, sweet, like the ball's rolling.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you feel like the ball's rolling, you're like, it'll just keep going.
Yeah.
But there's friction still. Even when the ball is rolling, there's friction. And so eventually it slows down and it catches up with you. And I mean, we've seen this, how we like graph our trainers where they have that like up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's like some of your consistent trainers will have a smaller amplitude, right? And then somebody else might have a massive one. And so I think a lot of times, I mean, you see it where it's like, okay, there's a scarcity moment where you're down, and then that encourages you to bump back up, and then you end up hopefully surpassing your previous midpoint or comfortability point, if you will. So I remember when I was talking about the 60 grand that teachers are making, I was still in a 1-bedroom apartment with my dog and my girlfriend. and then you showed me, you're like, dude, if you do this, you own this house. And I'm like, oh, okay, I should keep going.
Yeah.
So,
and what's great is that as you continue to win more, it only comes back and helps your clients more as well. So to your point, right, when you're coming from more of a place of abundance, right?
Yeah.
And I think we even talked about this earlier today. You stopped by my office and you're like, man, it's so much easier to deliver sessions when you're not thinking about anything else, right?
Yeah.
Other than being able to deliver an awesome session.
It is cool. And like, it's still a paradigm shift I'm like currently going through, but like, I haven't looked at my bank account, I think, for the entire month of December.
Yeah.
Right. Which, granted, I probably should be. I know I should be budgeting. I'm just not spending money. But like, it's cool to not do that. And like, I'm not like, crap, what's my next paycheck? Like, I'm not checking my paychecks right now. It's just, I'm just working. I'm just servicing. And I think in the month of December alone, and you're going to hate me for this, I may have delivered more free sessions this month than I have in a month in probably 2 years. Just because I was like, you know what? I have time. I'm already at the club. I want to be here.
Yeah.
Just come in. And I was texting people. I'm like, look, I'm already gonna be here. Just come in and work out. Like,
Yeah.
I'll train you for free. Let's just get an extra one in this week.
Yeah.
So I did that like crazy this month, and it's just because I'm having fun. I love it.
It's where you've positioned yourself is now it frees you up to give, right?
Yeah, for sure.
When we don't have to think about ourselves and our own needs, it makes us so much more giving, which is ultimately what I love most about this career. I mean, the more you give, the more you receive, and it's never ending.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I really enjoy. So you've made that decision, right, through that 3-year mark in your career. Right now, we're obviously doing some things for growth, right? What values and beliefs do a more veteran trainer, someone that's been in the industry, let's say not even veteran, but let's say like 3+ years, right? They've made it through that 2 to 3 year sticking point, right, where they've made their first money, if you will, their first batch of lifers, clients that possibly are going to work with them forever, and they're moving on into a different phase of their career, right? They're making good money, and then they hit that plateau, right? What's next?
Well, I think sometimes like veteran trainers tend to lose. I think I say veteran, but also like in turn sometimes older trainers, like people that are like moving to maturity, and possibly they gain some weight or they quit working out as much. They have kids, and so like for some reason they quit working out, and I've seen that a lot, at least in our club, where it seems like veteran trainers kind of lose their conviction and their belief on fitness itself, and so then they start to lose like, okay, well, this is the level of value I'm providing to somebody, and they forget that, they don't realize how important working out is because they stop doing it themselves, and so then this leads to them like undercharging or again, like looking for other avenues of income or revenue or whatever, rather than focusing on like, okay, this product that I'm offering is so helpful that like it's worth me pursuing people to give it to, right? We talk about the cure for cancer all the time, where it's like, if you had the cure for cancer, you would be knocking on doors, like door to door every day. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have cancer? And just delivering that product because you have it.
Right.
And so I think sometimes we see veteran trainers lose that. And I think that's one that we could bring back. And like try to get them working out more and understanding why they were working out in the first place, because then they have conviction in fitness. What do you see? Because you've had a lot of experiences too with veterans.
For sure. And I would say that working out piece may not just be on the would you say more veteran trainers, right? Or
older trainers. Right? Trainers. I see it.
I don't know if that's exclusive, right, by age, but that conditioning piece is a huge part of it, right? If you're not conditioned to work 8, 10, 12, 15-hour days, right? This career is going to be a grind, right? You're not just sitting at a desk, snoozing through the day, right? Not saying that that's what people do, but the mental energy and physical energy that's required to really deliver a great session can be a lot if you're not working out regularly.
You're not doing it consistently too. I was talking to a lot of my clients about this week actually, because we had bad weather last week and the holidays and a lot of clients were gone. And Monday of Tuesday this week, I like realized I was like, oh, I'm dragging. Like I'm getting tired. But then Wednesday, Thursday, so today even, I was like, I'm on it. I'm back. And so like it is a grind, if you will, to do those 12-hour days, but like it stops feeling that way once you get the conditioning back, like you were talking about.
You get conditioned to it for sure. I mean, just like any aspect of fitness. And I think that's super important. So to answer your question, right, as we go throughout our career, not stopping doing the things we did at the very beginning, never losing the passion for fitness, right, and how empowering it is. We have to live it ourselves. You can always tell when a trainer is getting in better shape themselves, that they're telling all their clients what they're doing, right, and they can't stop talking about it, and that energy transfers. I think that's crucially important. The next thing, right, that I've seen for trainers that have really elevated throughout their entire career, right, they've never plateaued out, they've never gotten to the point where I'm good enough, right? We say that all the time. Good enough never is. Right. But you've gotten to a point where you've acquired some skill sets, right, that are very useful to you, but would also be useful to your peers, right? One of the coolest things that you can do then to keep yourself sharp and also to continue to grow and find fulfillment is to give back to your peers, is to give back to other trainers on your team, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that a trainer must elevate into a management position, right? But they could be helpful in recruiting new trainers, right? And I'm sure there's means of compensation for that. They can be working referral pipelines and new business pipelines for other trainers and get compensated for that too, right? Not just find fulfillment in helping your peers, but you're going to find compensation opportunities too.
Yeah. I think that's like, I mean, even more true. Like if you own, let's say you own your own studio, like you're in a private studio and you're doing your own thing through that. The moment your business is booked up, I mean, odds are your clients have referrals to bring you, but you don't have the time for them anymore. And so it's like to bring another trainer in and teach them how you train and like show them the way. And then also like, it's okay, I have clients for you, and then see them outsource and stuff. That's how you can truly make an impact in your community. Sure. We talk about Wichita all the time. And I mentioned the other day how it upsets me that Wichita is one of the unhealthiest cities in the country because I work here.
Right.
And I feel like if I work here, we should not be unhealthy. Like we should be a really healthy city. And so I think for trainers at small studios, but also in corporate places where it's like, if you can bring people in, I mean, you're going to add your levels of contribution, and it builds a lot of conviction around what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And what's really cool is that you can now cut that learning curve down for somebody else, right? Which will only allow us to move the needle that much more. So if what took you several years, right, to build as a business, right? Imagine if you could have now a dozen plus people do it in half the time, right? How much more are we going to actually move the needle in a city like Wichita, which is one of the most unhealthy cities in America? Regardless of how many gyms keep getting built, it's not gyms that are helping people get healthy, it's trainers, right? So we need the trailblazers in order to help those up and coming, right? We need our vets to give back to the people that are up and coming in order to continue to make an impact, right? And it only makes the job of the vet easier, right? Because that trainer is always going to be thankful to you. You're always going to get business opportunities back
to you, for sure. And the more trainers you have working in a club, and the more trainers you have training people, when you're talking to a new member or somebody you're bringing into the studio for the first time, the better that whole environment looks. And like we talk about this a lot, where it like perpetuates the idea that, okay, people here work with trainers.
Yep.
And people here make progress and they enjoy it and they love it.
Weird.
yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And so while we're on the topic, as far as like new trainers going, I mean, Andy, when you started, you were 19, right?
As far as like training people, yeah.
Yeah, I was 19 when I started training. And I know you took off even quicker than I did. What was the hardest belief you had to master in order to come in? Because some are a lot harder than others. And especially if you don't have a great teacher like I had, then it might be tough. So what did you struggle with?
As far as struggle with was the business acumen, as far as understanding like the how to acquire a client, right?
Okay.
Because when I started, it was like, okay, like here's a towel and a spray bottle, go clean the floor, right? And maybe you'll happen to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And what you say, no one's going to be around to tell you what to say. You just have to figure out how to cold get to somebody that you're cleaning up their weights to become a client. They've been using the gym for 20 years, right?
And if that's you, by the way, if you're still in that situation, this podcast is going to be your place, because we're going to be putting out some good stuff on how to handle that.
Right, and how to not go through the same experience
that you sound like you went through.
And I mean, that's just the way that it was, and learning through a lot of trial and error, and it's like, figure it out. And I remember when I was hired into my first corporate gym position, the individual that hired me literally within a week was out the door. So I had no fitness manager, no leader. And I remember, I mean, always having been in leadership positions prior to that in other avenues, reaching out to the regional director and be like, I've always been like a leader. I've always helped in these different areas. What do I have to do to get the job? And the club and the industry that the company I was with was on the East Coast is, well, I've seen zero sales in your club for the last 30 days. I need to go sell more PT. So I'm like, okay.
Back to square one.
How to sell more PT. And I remember, it's so funny. I show people this now. I pull up YouTube and I'll type in personal training sales, right? And there literally isn't a single video on there that doesn't have a little red bar underneath it, meaning that I had watched it
all of them
from years ago, because I didn't have anybody, right? So the thing that I had to learn was the business acumen. The skill set that I had was resourcefulness, right? Whenever I'd wanted to learn something, I mean, I Googled it.
Right? Yeah, and I was about to ask you that too, because I see like 100 books here, and I know you read. And so I was going to ask you, like, where did you find that education? Because I was lucky enough where, of course, you gave me resources, but you also just one-on-one taught me how to do half of this stuff.
Yeah, I've been able to accelerate the learning curve for who's next, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to do that for who's next.
So pursuing education for like formats even like this, like that we're hosting, do you think was like your primary way for educating yourself when you didn't have someone to help you out?
That, I mean, and books as well.
Books.
And then seeking out great mentors that I didn't have immediate access to, right? They weren't like a direct report for me. But people that I knew from within the company, whether on a leaderboard I was in Philly at the time, that were in New York or were in DC, that were succeeding. And I just reached out to them. I sent them an email, right? And later on, I was promoted into becoming peers with those individuals, and I was able to learn a lot. They were able to accelerate my learning curve.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was very fortunate that I had some great leadership that completely changed my my beliefs and my values, right? And then the skill sets came along the way, if you will. So to kind of transition out of like a trainer's path through their first several years, right? I want to talk more about some specific subjects, but maybe how has your paradigm shifted around your concept of time, right? Let's say, right? Or time management.
Okay.
As opposed to when you first started, what do you think time management was to now when you're working 12 plus hour days on average, right? On average, Tiger, you complete 250.
Well, the goal this year is like way more than that.
More than that, right.
70 a week, hopefully.
Looking backwards on the year 2022, you've averaged 250 sessions, hour-long, one-on-one sessions a month, right? Personal training, averaging now, I mean, upwards of $100 a session. So your concept of time management is very different now, I'm sure, than it was when you started playing video games in the assessment office. Okay.
Well, like early on, it was, if you're in this business and like, especially our top guys, even like our top veteran guys, like long term, you're in here at 5 a.m. You start in the morning, and like at the end of the day, like that's the first one I think new trainers kind of miss on, is that I was like, I'm going to come in at like 8 or 9, maybe 10, and then I'll work later in the day and I'll work into the evening. Right. Yeah. And so that was how I started out. And so what happens is you pick up a lot of evening clients. And then so I realized like evening clients typically aren't your best market. And then so I was like, okay, I'll just start waking up earlier and then I'll go home earlier because I want time to hang out with my girlfriend, right? Which is now my fiance. But it was like, and Andy would always ask me, he's like, well, what do you guys do? And I'm like, I don't know. We watch TV or we do nothing. We sit there on our phones half the time and just, we're on our own phones separate on the other sides of the couch.
Right.
And so I started working mornings and then I was like, okay, I don't want to work late. And then it was like, well, I'm just going to go home and do nothing. Like I might as well be working because I mean, one, I want to get paid. Like that's part of this. Like we're in this career to get paid. But then at the same time, it's like we have an abundance of opportunity. Like there's so many people that need help and want your help. And that's where we kind of switched into like the operating from a place of abundance rather than from scarcity, where it was like, I just should be there because that's my job. I should just be there because that's my duty as a person. And then, so now it's like 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. just feels right. And then at the same time, when I get home and I do see my fiance, it's a lot more rewarding. I mean, it feels so much better. And then the time we spend, we do a lot more together, and it's like, we're not on our phones when we're seeing each other, And so like, to a degree, like having less time together has really brought us together a lot more because we make a lot more out of that time. So
you'd say when you've played harder at work, right? You've treated it more seriously, right? You've worked harder, right? You've played harder too.
You play harder at home. You play hard. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So if you play hard at work, you're going to play hard at home, play hard on the weekends, play hard when you go on vacation, right? And when you go out and do fun stuff.
Right. So when you went to go and get engaged, you were in Belize for how long?
11 days.
11 days.
Yeah.
Right. It's not many careers that you can just go do that, right? Let alone the financial piece, but the taking time off and you can do that, right?
Yeah.
And it feels earned, right? You don't feel guilty, right? You've completely earned it. It's just to make you make sure that everybody knows that you're not brainwashed, right?
I mean,
maybe you are. No, I'm kidding. But the whole, when you play hard at work, you're able to play hard at home, right? Not just because you have the resources to do so, but it just does become a mindset where you enjoy the time that you have at home, right? And not just because there's less of it, but because you're so conditioned to doing more, right? And doing better. And I feel like that's what's missing for a lot of people, right? That are always struggling to find work-life balance, right? It's because they're not getting enough quality at either, right? And that they are operating from a place of scarcity. You mentioned that schedule exercise where you did the math, right? Mm-hmm. Where most people are considering and looking at their work week as like the lowest common denominator, right? Or the 40 hours. Okay, what am I going to do with the rest of it? What the exercise that we encourage people to do is starting with 168 hours. Put in everything that you're prioritizing outside of the club, right? What are your top 5 priorities? Okay, put them in your calendar.
Yeah.
Right? Put them in your calendar as far as like, how are you going to prioritize them? As opposed to just listing them as like on a priority board and then not actually like following through.
Yeah, it's like what time, what day are you going to do priority number 1? You know, like when are you going to do these things? Planning that out is, really important.
If it's that important, there should be time allocated to it, as opposed to just like listing it and saying it's something that's important to you, right? And a lot of people say their health is important to them, but they never make time to go to the gym, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to say that our spouse or our activities outside of the club are important to us if we don't actually go in our calendar first.
Yeah, if they're important to you, you don't leave them to chance.
Yeah.
You guarantee them.
You put them in your calendar, and what's cool is after pretty much most people put all their top priorities into their calendar, right? And then leave whatever is left for work time, right? And really building their life that they want, supporting their life. Not that it's not a part of their life. Like you said, how you do one thing's how you do everything. You should be living 100%, all 168. But where I was going with that is you end up having way more than 40 hours left over. Right?
Yeah.
We just did the exercise again for you, right?
We've done it so many times.
I mean, you update it on your own regularly, right?
Now,
periodically we check in. And you did it the other day and you still have like 80 hours left for work. Right?
Well, I checked my phone the other day to see my phone hours, and I had 5 hours. And I was like, how in the hell do I have 5 hours? There's no way. There's no way I'm spending 5 hours a day on my phone. And so this whole week I've been talking to my clients. I'm like, I don't know when I'm doing it. I'm trying to figure that out. So yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. And goodness, I forgot where I was going to go now.
That's okay. Well, what's cool, and then as a personal trainer, right, with your ability to, I mean, essentially build your own business, right, as far as name your price point, and then ultimately what you're taking home, right? If the average takes the average person more than 60 hours a week to make 6 figures for a personal trainer, you can do it in 40, right, or less. Yeah. And then if you put in the same 60, 80, right, you're making physician level income, right? Wearing gym shorts to work.
Wearing gym shorts.
It's awesome. Right. And
I think that like conditioning part like cannot be overstated, right? How important that is, because I mean, it's just like if you want to run further, right? Let's say you want to run a marathon, but you've only ever run a half. It's like, well, you need to run further in general in order to run further. And so like right now it's really like taboo almost to say, hey, work 40 hours. People are like against the 40-hour work week. And it's not a matter of like, oh, that's too many hours and like that's not good for a human being. It's not good for a human being that's never done 40 hours to just all of a sudden try to do 70 or 60. That's going to sound insurmountable and sound horrible. And so it's just like working out, where you have to train that and build that up. And then it becomes second nature. It becomes natural. And it's just how you are, you know? So it's not a brainwashing. It's you're trained. And so then like you talked about, like it almost becomes hard to be not busy, right? Yep. And so like when I went on my trip to Belize, we spent like the first 5 days completely in the jungle, and we had activities every single day. We were on go mode the whole time. Well, then we went out to the beach, and I think I made it about 2 days, and I was like, I'm so bored. Like, what are we doing? We need to go do something. And so it's like you said, it was like you condition yourself to it, and then that stays with you, and then you're just always getting it. And so then I think that's the true secret to like making the most out of your life. I mean, where every single week you are doing the most you possibly can. And it feels, it's so good. Yeah. Don't be an accountant of your time, right? Or a compartmentalizer where like the only time I'm living is when I'm not at work, right? No. No. I always say the best part of my day is when I'm at work, which hopefully my fiance doesn't hear that, but at the end of the day, like that is the best part of my day. That's where I'm having the most fun. I'm the most active, and I'm contributing the most. And so it always feels the best. And so it's hard for me when I get home to not jump on the computer and do some extra work or get some extra stuff done. And again, I know hearing that if you're a new trainer is hard.
For sure.
Or if you're new on just working in general. I mean, we have a lot of young people in our industry. Mm-hmm. The idea of 40 hours even at the beginning sounds crazy. So you don't have to start there, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think would be like a reasonable starting point when we're talking about time as a belief? Like what level should that progress? Like how quickly should that go?
Yep. So the first thing is, I mean, don't put the limiter on it right away. Like don't immediately put the dampener on it. I remember when I first started, trainers that were in the industry longer than me would always talk about like, hey, what's your inner row number, right? It might have came from like the old Bally's days or something. We call them inner rows, right? How many sessions could you do in a row before you had to tap out, take a break, work out, eat something, and then come back and train another X number of sessions, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember, I mean, just in my mind, I immediately thought of it as like a negative connotation. So I'm gonna explain how I reframed it. But like, I was asked, all right, what's your inner rows, right? And I remember when I started, right, and I trained 3 sessions all out because I didn't know anything else at the time. I trained 3 sessions all out. And I'm like, man, I'm tired. Apparently that's my inner row number, right? I need to go take a break and then you come back and then you train 3 more, right? And a lot of times people put that dampener on themselves like, I can't do more than this. And then they never explore their horizons. They never
push the agenda. And I had never heard that term for the first probably 2 years of my career. Mm-hmm. And then you said it to me early in 2022. You asked me, I think we were at like McAllister's Inn. You're like, what's your inner row right now?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? And you explained it to me. And I was like, I think it's like 6. Like usually 6, I get tired, right? And then I got mad about it. And I was like, why do I get tired after 6 sessions? Like, I don't want to be tired. So that's the day we like decided. I was like, okay, I'm going to do the marathon.
Yep.
The training marathon. Yep. So a kind of cool story. Basically, because he told me that for my birthday, I decided I was going to do 26 training sessions in a row. Mm-hmm. And I told you, I was like, look, dude, I'm not conditioned enough. Like, I need to be better at this. So I was like, I'm just going to, I mean, if you're trying to work on your bench press, every now and then you have to test your max.
Yeah.
So I tested my max.
Yeah.
26 was way above my max.
You overreached.
I overreached.
You survived.
Super compensation. Right. Now I feel way better.
You made it. So yeah, you don't want to jump from 6 to 26, right?
No.
And now you've done 26. You've overreached. Now it's like 12. Like there's regular days that you go straight through.
I go 12 to 14. Pretty normal now. Yeah.
But so instead of asking, okay, like, man, how do I always avoid doing more than 3 in a row, right? How do I put restrictions on my schedule to never have more than 3 in a row or 5 in a row, 6 in a row, right? What would it take, right, for me to be able to make it through just one more than what I'm doing right now, right? If my inner row number is 4, right, I can do 4 sessions before I get tired. What would it take for me to be able to do 5 and be able to do it relatively easily, right? And over time, is that something that I could condition myself to do more of, right, and increase that even more? Of course.
Yeah.
Right? Don't put the limiter on yourself. It's, again, looking at it from a position of scarcity versus abundance.
Yeah, and when we're talking about beliefs, like that's got to be one of your beliefs is like you have to believe that you can train yourself on more than just your exercise, like just more than just your workouts. Like you can train your work capacity and train your work conditioning, like how much can I work? And I think to a degree, like most of us getting into the industry, like we always talk about, like we're doing it to help people, but we also are doing it because we think it's going to be fun, right? And so I think it's important not to lose sight of that. That's been one of my beliefs that I naturally had coming into this because I wanted to be a part-time guy was like, I'm just going to do this because I think it'll be fun. Right. And it's like maintaining that this is fun mentality and belief and making my sessions fun has been huge for me to help progress my capacity, I feel like.
Energy begets energy for sure. And it's easy to say it, of course, on the other end of it, right, as far as how we experience it. But or what we experience now, but it takes working through it, right? Those uncomfortable years and just doing that extra one more. Mm-hmm. So we could probably get into work-life balance a whole lot deeper and
go forever,
right? And we could probably talk on that subject for a long time, where essentially, I mean, create the life that you want by design, right? So where you're not always feeling like you have to balance things and you have to be reactive. Right. We may cover this again in a later podcast. So moving on, how is your value system or how has your beliefs changed around money from when you started as a 19-year-old kid still coming in, doing school, to now a high-performing personal trainer, making a great income, right? Not just for the area, but period, right? And where you're at right now, how's your concept around money changed?
That's been one of the cooler parts of kind of like building my business as quickly as I have. I know like growing up, I grew up relatively, I wouldn't say poor, but we were obviously on the lower income side of things. And so there was a level of scarcity around like different resources. Like I remember like my goal growing up was like if I have a kid and they ask me for school supplies, we get it that day rather than on payday, right? Rather than on Friday. And so my original goal was like, okay, I think that's probably around like 80 grand, right? And so it was like if I can make 80 grand, like I can take care of my family and stuff. So that's where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to college. Physical therapists make around that much. And so like that's what I'm gonna get into. And truthfully, I thought physical therapists made like 120, and that was a realization they don't even make not even close to that most of the time. And so that was like the initial goal. And then as like I've gotten and hit those benchmarks, it's continued to grow to a point where it's like, okay, one, that might not be as much money as I thought it was, right? First of all, like it doesn't go as far. And then second of all, like the belief around how possible it is to make more, regardless of how many hours you're willing to work, right? Like we can change our charge rates. I mean, if you're in a studio, you can obviously just pick it on your own. If you're in a corporate gym, hopefully they like give you some allowances with that, but you can change how much you're charging and then increase your income that way too, to where you're not maybe working 60, 70 hours if you don't want to, and then still make like a really, really solid living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you had a stigma around either making money or around people that made money when you first started, as opposed to when that shifted around, you said 60, 80K mark?
Yeah.
I remember the conversation that we had around 60, but you had said 80. Where do you feel like that? I mean, explain where you felt like that stigma came from, and then maybe how it shifted.
So, very solid question. I don't know if you already knew this about my background, but I grew up hating people that made a lot of money. To me, I always felt like people that had a lot of money were like exploitive and like felt like they were better than me, and so like that always bothered me a lot growing up, and I felt like they were selfish and like they could give back more. And a lot of that was adopted from my parents. Like my parents taught me to be that way. And you and I are extremely lucky because the company we work for, the owner we know, I mean, personally at this point, is none of those things. Is extremely generous and is an awesome guy. And so moving up through that, and like not only did I see him, but a lot of the people I train have a lot of money. I mean, that's how it has to be. That's our business. They have to have enough to afford you. And so
it'd be bad to see them as awful people.
Yeah, if you think your clients are awful human beings, like that's not good. So a lot of that kind of helped me out because like I love my clients. Like I'm very passionate about my clients. Like they are my favorite people, and a lot of them have higher incomes. And then also the realization that you can give back a lot more when you have a higher income, you know? And again, another thing that's really important is we've seen trainers that don't have integrity, right? Make a good income and then they're gone. You know, it's temporary. They don't ever own it. The best trainers that stick around and are constantly producing and constantly doing well are trainers that have a high level of integrity. They're servicing their clients well. They're not looking for shortcuts. They're not taking money under the table some way. It's always the trainers that are like truly giving a shit, and helping people. And so it was like, obviously people that are owning businesses or have a higher income, they probably have some of those same beliefs and character traits of being an integral human being. So that was a big change for me, was being, I mean, you can donate a lot more when you have a lot more money. You know? It's
true. You can be more giving with your time, like you mentioned, right? I mean, early on, right, a trainer might be concerned about giving away free sessions, right, or not getting paid for their time. You know, you never hear that being said from a top producer, right? You hear that from a trainer that's like hovering, right? So yeah, I love the things that you said about as far as, I mean, money and being, I mean, fiscally secure, right? Positions you to where you can be more giving. And I think that is one of the biggest stigmas that personal trainers adopt early on, that they kind of limit themselves in the career, especially because it is, I mean, a sales-based position. Like you need to go out and acquire your business.
Yeah.
It's not just given to you on somebody else's dime where they're giving that income to you, right? Right. As far as maybe like an hourly or salary position, you have to go out and earn it. And if you're not working, then you're not getting paid. But that relationship with money, right, as it shifts and grows, it's really cool to see. Trainers that have been in the industry able to make great incomes for themselves and great livings.
All of them deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just don't see a trainer delivering a bad service making, a good income. And then that's the luck of performance-based pay, is that you get to earn it. I think another one that new trainers, and I know I specifically struggle with, was like, again, the sales side of things. Mm-hmm. I remember going home to my fiance and I was like, I'm not a salesman. Like, I don't want to be a salesman. And there's that Tony Robbins video you sent over to me. And it's something I always tell the trainers, like right away, any trainer that I'm bringing on to the team, I'm like, okay, yes, you are a salesman, but you have to understand how much value you're adding to this person's life, how much you're changing their life. It's your moral obligation to make the sale.
Yep.
Okay. Because if you don't, and we have our statistics from our club, if you don't, that member or just that human being you saw walking down the street or at the grocery store at your local church, they'll never do this on their own. And so, of course, there's that hurdle of like, they have to, provide the investment, and you have to convince them that the investment's worthwhile. It's worthwhile though. And I think that's where conviction becomes such a big player in this, where being a person who believes in fitness or loves fitness, we always say like, oh, he's a fitness guy. Yep. Those people that are truly sold on the idea of fitness have a much easier time, jumping through the hurdles and the rationalizations that they might be receiving from somebody on the other end about, why they can invest in this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really important, and a big belief that we have to adopt is that it's your duty to make the sale, because if they walk out of that door, you're essentially disservicing them. I always say, I'm dramatic about it, I always say you're letting that person die.
Yeah.
Right. Which isn't necessarily true, but I mean, it could be theoretically. We've probably had it happen.
Yep. We say that often, is oftentimes the reason why people have to not do this is the reason why they must do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that is something that is adopted. Unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, but it's something that trainers only adopt through experience, it seems, right? Hopefully we can accelerate that learning curve, but where you're so confident in the value of this and what the alternative is going to be, that you sell harder, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you're not talking and using the word of sales, right? You're trying to convert that person to your way of thinking, right? And you're speaking with more conviction, and you've acquired more skill sets along the way, so you're more persuasive, and then you end up helping more people. It's only a luxury that's given to those that stick it through, right? And get to that point in their career.
And I think even on things like floor approaches, or just bringing someone in for a consultation in general that might already be in shape, can be another like massive one, where it's like, when you believe in what you're providing, like that becomes a lot easier too. I know I approached a female today that's like in fantastic shape, but she just had a massive hip issue, and she had surgery, and she's been doing rehab. And I'm seeing a bunch of issues with the way she's squatting and the way she's lifting and everything.
Yep.
And I was trying to ignore it because I've talked to her once before. And like, I got done with my set because I was working out, and I was like, I can't. And I walked up to her, and I'm like, you're doing this, this, and this wrong. Yep. And I'd love to work with you on it. Like, please let me work with you. I'll do anything. I just want to fix it. Yep. And she's like, okay, yeah. And so she gives me her phone number, and we're scheduled now.
Yep.
And it's like, it's just that itching, like burning, like, I know I can fix this. I know I can help this person. And so adopting that belief obviously is hard in the beginning, because you don't know whether you can help that person.
Yeah.
And so I think, like we talk about, like, it's really important to just focus purely on action out of the gate.
Yeah. It takes that courageous and perfect action that we talk about, until you have to maybe lean on the belief of somebody else that has it, right? Because they've been able to experience it, until you have it for yourself. I think that's really important. So to wrap up here, I know we've been probably going for about an hour now. Maybe just what are some like single word values that when you think about what it takes to be successful as a personal trainer, what it takes to be a high achieving personal trainer, right? Because we can vary the definitions of success, but a high achieving personal trainer, right? The top 1%. What are some values, right? Some one word values that you can think of?
First one comes off to my head is it's got to be like consistency. So like consistently on time, consistently with programs, consistently at the club for your appointments.
Yeah. People struggle because they're inconsistent, right? So what do you need to be for them is consistent.
Consistent. Yeah. Right? What would you say? You got one?
Oh, I thought you
you got a word now.
On consistency. I think intensity, right? As far as the energy you put in is going to dictate what you get out. Input equals output in this business. And I feel the more you put into it, the more you get out, not just financially, but also, I mean, spiritually from a fulfillment standpoint as well. So consistency, intensity, energy.
Integrity, of course. We talked about that being a big one a lot during this podcast, where, I mean, operating a good business where you're truly helping people and accepting the value that you're providing.
High character. Yep.
Yeah, have to be a high character individual. Confidence is a huge one. Mm-hmm. You have to have a lot of confidence in what you're doing. And then I think to a degree, like a higher calling would be like a good
purpose driven.
Yeah, purpose
driven. Going
driven.
back to the confidence piece, right? Because it's hard to be confident in something that you're not masterful at yet, right? But if you can place your confidence in your intentions. So before you actually have the result, right, of I've helped 100 people lose 100 pounds, right? Where you know the steps and you know how good you are, let's say. I know a lot of people say fake it till you make it or act as if. I don't think those necessarily work as well. You can mirror other people for sure, but you can place your confidence in your intentions, right? Alrighty, so that's going to bring us to a close for today. We really appreciate your time. I know we ran about an hour going over really just some foundational values that are important for a personal trainer to adopt and hopefully hold through the progression of their career. Definitely something that we're going to come back to and touch on more. We are going to dive in and be a lot more tactical probably over the next several weeks as far as the skill sets and the resources that a trainer needs to be successful. The next episode is going to be on engagement, lead generation, how you go about acquiring and finding clientele for yourselves. And then we're going to get into the conversion piece and then the service piece. We're really excited about introducing these strategies to you guys, and we really hope it helps you build your business and make a great impact here into the coming year and in 2023.
Of course. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care.